Hi guys, this is Tekken57. Welcome back to my tutorials. Today's tutorial is going to be focusing on how to use wrap3d to take the shape of a model from any mesh that you want to import into the WWE series of games, transfer the shape and the textures to a model for either 2K19, 2K22, 23, 24 upwards. Alright, so the model I'm going to be using today for the example is Hardcore Holly's model, which is from one of the SmackDown vs. Raw games. I think it's SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 that this model is from. Okay, you can see that I have the model already open in X-Ray. So what I want to do here is transfer the shape of Hardcore Holly's head onto a 2K23 model. I don't really need the shape of the body because I've been able to find another model which has a similar body shape. The model I'm going to be using to transfer the shape to is the Eddie Guerrero 2K23 model. Okay, so before we even start, why would you want to transfer the shape of this model to 2K19 or 2K23 models? Well, there's two reasons. Firstly, it makes texturing the model very easily because by transferring the shape and the texture to a 2K19 or 2K23 model, it takes the same UV position as those models. So therefore, it makes applying textures very easily because you can copy and paste textures from the 2K19 or 2K23 models onto this texture to create your own custom head texture. The second reason is that if you wish to animate the head, it makes the animations very, very simple because it has the same UV structure as 2K19 to 2K24 models. So you can use the method I've described to copy the shape keys using mesh data transfer in Blender. If you haven't seen the tutorial, look on my tutorials page and you should be able to find it. Alright, so without further ado, let's get started. So first thing, you want to ensure that the model is has a correct rotation. So I'm going to select rotate model on export if you are creating the model for 2K23. If you're not creating the model for 2K23 or 2K24, then you will leave this to false if you are using this for 2K19. Alright, so I'm going to leave it on because I'm creating this for 2K23. Remember, set it to false if you are doing for 2K19. Okay, I'm going to hit save settings. Now we need to import this into a 3D modeling program to prepare the head which we are going to wrap to. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do this in 3D Studio Max and Blender. 3D Studio Max primarily is used for 2K19. You can use Blender if you want to do 2K23 or 24. Alright, so I've opened this model using the Control O button, and I've opened up the UI object file. So Control O, and you open up the UI object file. I've already done this, so I'm not going to do it again. Okay, I'm just going to click on Export All, and I'm going to put this into a folder called Objects, and I'm going to select Folder. Alright, so this is exported all of the files to object format. I'm going to go into 3D Studio Max, and I have a batch importer exporter plugin. So I'm just going to click that. I'm going to browse for the files. I'm just going to copy the path and put it in there. So let's do that. Okay, and we can click on open and we import all. Okay, if you were to do this in Blender, I also have a batch import export plugin. You can go into import away from batch, and I can select all of the objects and use, I like to keep the vert order on, and you can click on import. All right, this will import this into Blender. All right, so now we just want the head mesh. We don't want anything else. All right, so let's just get rid of the eyes first. So let's delete that. We don't need this as well. Okay, I just want to get rid of the inner parts of the mouth as well, so I'm just going to hide that. The teeth we don't need, mouth bag, tongue, etc. Alright, so thereafter we don't really need any of the other body parts. So, we only really need the head up until, say, about the shoulder area. So I'm just going to select everything and I'm going to collapse it into a single mesh. Okay, so we go into the Utilities tab and we click on Collapse with everything selected. And then we click on Collapse Selected. Okay, this will make it into a single mesh. Alright, and then thereafter we select the elements that we don't need. Okay, we don't need any of those. We can delete that. Okay, thereafter I'm going to go into the polygon selection and I'm just going to select whatever else we don't need. So I think that should be okay. Let's take out those polygons as well. We don't really need those. It doesn't have to be exactly neat because we don't really wrap the shoulders, but the shoulders is useful to have for reference. Alright, if you're going to do this in Blender, you do pretty much the same thing. You just highlight the objects and you delete whatever you don't need. Alright, I'm not going to do it in Blender as well. It's pretty much the same process. Alright, in Blender, if you wanted to join the objects, you can just select all of the objects and you press Ctrl+J. This will join this into a single object if you want to do this in Blender. Alright, so now we need to combine these meshes into a single mesh so that we will get rid of all of these seams. So I'm going to go into modifiers and I'm going to select vertex weld and I'm going to set this value to 001. Okay, hit enter. Also probably a good idea to save your scene as you're working, so I'm just going to hit Ctrl S. Alright, so we've joined the vertices. Now if you were to do this in Blender, you would hit Ctrl+J. You would go into the edit mode, then you press the M key and you select by distance. Okay, this will combine the meshes. Okay, and then thereafter you go into the modifiers tab and you select weld. Okay, so this will fix all of the lines that you have subdividing the meshes in Blender. Same with 3D Studio Max. Alright, now we're ready to import the head that we want to work with. You can import this using either X-Ray, exporting to Wavefront, and then thereafter importing the model into 3D Studio Max. In Blender, you can use the MDL plugins, which you can find on the ProWrestlingMods.io website, to import the model directly if you wish. I'm just going to import it using the X-Ray method. It's a bit easier for me, so I'm just going to hit Ctrl+L and then open up the 2K23 model that I want to work with. Okay, so I just want the head, so I'm going to click on export and I'm going to also want the caruncle, which is the inner part of the eyes. I prefer to sculpt these together in one go to save time. Alright, I'm going to go back into my plugins here. I'm going to click on import, browse for files, and I'm going to select the caruncle and the head. Okay, and then thereafter I'm going to combine both of these using the utilities. Collapse selected. Okay, it's going to make this into a single mesh. Alright, Blender, same story. File, import, wavefront batch. We're going to go into the head and the caruncle, keep words orders. We have both of these, so Ctrl J, we're going to weld it, and then we're going to add a weld as well. Yeah. Alright, and we go back into object mode. Alright, same thing here. We're going to go into the modifiers tab and give it a vertex weld, and the threshold is set to 001. Alright, so this head is prepped for us to work with. Now if you go to the hardcore Holly head, you'll notice that the head is very small compared to the Eddie Guerrero head, because the older models are 10 times smaller than the current models. Now this will probably be the case if you are importing a model from another game, maybe Gears of War or whatever it is you want to import. the scale of the model head won't be the same. So we're going to scale this up to fit the current scale of our model. So we're going to make this 10 times bigger. So I just right click on the scale transform. Where it says offset world is currently set at 100%, I'm going to make it 1000%. So it's going to make it 10 times bigger. Alright. And if you go to the model, you can see it's more or less the same scale as the Eddie Guerrero model. Okay, then I'm going to position this upwards to fit there. Okay, I like to use the orthographic views so I can see that it's properly aligned. So let's try and get the chin in line more or less. The head seems to be aligned okay as well. Let's just make sure it's the correct scale. It looks about right. It doesn't look bigger, much bigger than the other head. Nose, mouth, etc. seems to be about the same kind of scale. Alright, so I think 10 times the scale was more or less right. We don't really need to worry about the shoulders, etc. because we're not really going to wrap. We're only going to wrap up to about there on the neck. Alright, in Blender you can do the same thing. So if you go to Blender, you select the object 0 and we can go into the scale option. Okay, if you toggle the X-ray option, you can see if this is the correct scale or not. So let's zoom into that. Alright, you can see it's more or less the same scale. The positioning also looks fine to me. As long as the base of your chin is okay, the model should be fine to wrap. Alright, I'm just going to turn that off. Okay, so before we do anything, we want to make sure that the UVs of the models are correctly aligned. If these are not aligned, you will not be able to copy the textures when you are doing the wrap. So I'm just going to click on the object 0, which is hardcore hollies, and I'm going to click on UV unwrap. Okay, I'm going to go into open UV editor, and we need to make sure that this model is actually within the square block here. So we're just going to select everything. We're going to click on the move selected object. Where it says V, you hit 1 and you press enter. So this will bring this within that block. Alright, and we hit save. Do the same thing for the Guerrero head. So unwrap UVW. Select everything, click that, and we type in 1. Alright, so that means that your UVs are in the correct positions. Okay, over on the Blender side, if you wish to do this, it's very simple. Click on the head, okay, you click on the object, go into UV editing, you'll notice that this is off screen, so we click on A, G, Y, and we press 1, and then we press enter. This will ensure that it's within the square. Alright, and then you do the same thing for the Eddie Guerrero model as well. I'm not going to do it just to save time. If you want, you can also increase the polygon count of this model if you want to make it a bit higher poly for the copy. Sometimes it actually helps to have a higher poly model to copy from, so you get more detail. I like to use the mesh smooth option. Okay, and then thereafter I select either NURMS or quad output. Depend which one looks better. Let's go with quad output. Okay, I leave the iterations as 1 and I leave the smoothness as 1. We don't really need to worry about how many polygons it actually creates, because we're just going to wrap to this head. Alright, and then we can export this. So I'm going to click on export. I'm just going to call this Holly head. Alright, I'm going to save this as object. Alright, do the same thing for Guerrero. So export selected, call this Guerrero head. Okay, you can do the same thing on the blender side. Thanks. Alright, so now we want to import these into wrap. So I'm using wrap 2023. Now I have a scene that I've already created for you, which is linked in the description below. So you don't need to go and recreate all of these nodes. Alright, on the left side is the mesh that you want to copy the shape from. On the right side is the mesh that you are copying to. So this is the Eddie Guerrero head, and on the left is the Hardcore Holly head. So firstly, we're just going to double click this that says load geometry, and I'm going to select the Hardcore Holly head that we've just created from 3D Studio Max. Alright, so you just click on the light bulb to turn this on, and you press the F key. This will bring this into focus. You can hold the Alt and the left mouse button to rotate this. Alright, so we're also going to load the image that we want to copy the texture from. So I'm going to click this, and I'm going to select it only views PNG, JPEG. So if it's DDS, you have to convert the file first. So I'm going to select the PNG file that I've created. Okay, and this has loaded the texture for me. So let's hide this for now. Now let's do the same with the Eddie Guerrero head. So let's go into the same folder, and I'm going to select Guerrero head. Then we're also going to load the texture for Eddie Guerrero. Okay, so let's just display this to see that it's loaded correctly. Alright, so your heads, both the heads are displayed. Now just hover over this exclamation mark just to make sure you don't get any kind of error. So you'll notice that the error says invalid input point correspondences, so that's fine. We're going to fix that. If you get any type of error that says there's multiple meshes, or the meshes are not connected or whatever, that means that you haven't welded your meshes together, or you have unnecessary polygons which are not attached to the mesh. So this basically means that you need to have one solid mesh with no floating polygons, and everything must be welded together. So we don't have that problem here. So now we're going to go into, so double click select polygons and then go into visual editor. Okay, you'll notice that it's selected all sorts of random polygons because I already have a project that I've worked on before this. So click anywhere on the screen to clear this. So now we're going to select where we don't want the wrapping to take place. So we're going to try and only wrap up until say midway on the neck. So I'm just going to go click my left mouse button, go up and try and neatly select what it is that we don't want to wrap. Okay, so to add more of the selection, you click on the shift button and then you do the same thing again. Okay, to deselect polygons, you press the control key and your left mouse button and you deselect. Alright, so that looks neat enough for me, I would think. Just make sure you haven't missed anything at the back. So let's reselect that. Okay, it's not an exact science. You can adjust this later on if you don't want. Alright, so it tells us now that the parts that are in red are not going to be wrapped. Alright, now we're going to the select point pairs. So double click that. Now the select point pairs is going to tell you which parts of the models are should be wrapped to. So we're going to tell it where the eyes on each model is, where the nose is, where the mouth is, etc. So click on the clear all option because I already have points assigned on my previous project. Alright, and I have the option that says sync views checked. Sync views means that if you move one forward using your mouse scroll wheel or your alt and left mouse button, both of these will move together. Now you don't need to add a substantive amount of points because the program actually does a fairly good job of finding the faces using its own logic, but I like to just give it a few points to tell it where more or less the facial features are. So don't go overboard. You can add your own as you feel fit. I like to just more or less tell it where the mouth is, the nose is, the chin, the eyes, the ears, and the jawline. Alright, so you don't have to do it exactly like me, but the points that I'm adding usually works fairly well for me. Alright. Alright, and then thereafter I like to select where the jawline ends, there, and then I like to select the ears as well, so it tells me more or less where the ear should be shaped. Alright. If we're happy with the placement, and then thereafter we can go into the wrapping option. I see it says press compute to press recompute the result. So double click on the wrapping option and you press compute. Okay, I've set the subdivisions to 5, which means it'll iterate 5 times to try and get it to match as best as it can. You can set this higher or lower if you want, but I find that the value of 5 usually works quite well for me. Alright, so now it has the shape of the model already assigned for us. So we are now ready to copy the texture across. So if you click on transfer texture, you can specify what resolution you want the texture to copy to. If you click on the viewport 2D option, you'll see that it's now applied the hardcore Holly texture in the same UV layout as the 2K head. Alright, so just below this you see there's an option that says save image, so double click that and we're gonna save the image. So I'm gonna click on the ellipsis button and I'm gonna call this ray trace diffuse. You can call it whatever you want, and I'm gonna say compute current frame. Okay, if you also want to copy the normal map from the hardcore Holly model, I have that loaded. You can just double click on load image and you can load the normal PNG if you want. And then thereafter, if you double click on save image, you can also save the normal option as well. So I'm just going to click on normal. And I want to say compute current frame. Okay, so let's double check that we have both the images. You can see we have the diffuse and we have the normal already done. Alright, so if you want to view what the model looks like so far, you can hide those and you can view the wrapping model. Okay, so this is what the shape looks like as is. If there's any kind of problems with the shape that you're not happy with, you can go and repeat the process in terms of the select point pairs to give it a bit more detail. I'm fairly happy with the shape. It looks okay. Once you apply the texture, you'll see that it'll actually look quite good. If you just want to see what the image that looks like, you can double click on the load image 2K texture, and instead of loading the Eddie Guerrero texture, we can load the hardcore Holly texture just to see what it looks like. And you can see it's wrapped it fairly well. It looks pretty much like the base model that I have wrapped from. So let's go back to the Eddie Guerrero texture. Now, if you export the mesh the way it is, you'll find that the neck is not aligned with the original head that we imported, the Eddie Guerrero head. This is because the program has moved the head around spatially to try and match the shape of the hardcore Holly head. So now what we want to do is try and get the same alignment of the neck and shoulders so that it fits with the body mesh of the Eddie Guerrero model. Now you'll notice that I have an option here that says save geometry not aligned. So if you actually wanted to save the mesh without aligning it, you can do so. But I don't use this. I just put this there in case you needed it for whatever reason. So now what we need to do is we need to select the inverse of what we did before using the select polygons inverted. Because now we actually want to wrap the position of the neck, but we don't want to wrap the position of the face because we have the hardcore Holly face. So unfortunately what we need to do now is you can't use it the way it is. You basically need to create your own. So click on this. I just left this here for reference so you can see what each thing connects to. So you'll see that the wrapping goes into the select polygons, and then thereafter the select polygons goes into the wrapping neck position. So we're going to delete this. I'm going to take the previous select polygons and I'm going to click Ctrl C and Ctrl V. Alright, so take the wrapping and connect it to the blue part. Take the pink option and connect it to the wrapping neck position. Now the reason why I've done this is because it makes it a lot easier for you to select the head without the neck. Otherwise you would have to do this manually. So with everything selected the way it is, you just click on the invert option. So now this tells the program that you want to wrap the neck portion and not the head portion. Alright, we go into the wrapping neck position and then once again we click on compute. So this is going to align the neck and shoulders back to the original model. Okay, with that done, we go into the Save Geometry Aligned Final option. We click on the ellipsis, and then we can save this head. Okay, I'm just going to call it head wrap. And we're going to click on Compute Current Frame. Okay, now I'm going to import these into 3D Studio Max just to see what these look like. So I'm going to select the head wrap, and I'm going to select the body for Eddie Guerrero to see that the neck is aligned correctly. So let's import all of these. Okay, I'm just going to call this head, and I'm going to say wrap, so we know which is the final head. All right, and then thereafter I'm going to go to the head. Okay, you can see that the edges are slightly out, so you can edit these using just your vertex selection. Yeah, and you can move these slightly just to close that gap. Wrap does a pretty good job of getting the edges as close as possible, but sometimes you have to just do some minor edits to get this exactly the way you want. Alright, so let's see what this looks like with the texture applied. And I'm going to assign this to the head. Alright, and you can see it's done a pretty good job of copying the texture and doing the shape of the model. Alright, and you can open the model back in Blender, and now because this has the correct UV coordinates and UV shape as the 2K models, you can copy the animations using the Mesh Data Transfer plugin and the Active UV option. Alright, thereafter go and rig your model using whichever method you want for either 2K23 or 2K19 like I've shown in my tutorials. If you haven't seen those tutorials, look at my YouTube channel and look on my tutorials playlist. I hope this tutorial has been helpful to you, and until next time, happy modding.